Hello again, welcome to my part of Davison Month, the month where we celebrate 40 years of Peter's reign as the Doctor, but really, there's no need to remind us that. I'm sure everybody knows this fact already, and if you don't, there you go. Anyways, I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. Now, everyone in Davison Month is relatively going to be doing something about his 3-year era, but I will not, no, because I want to talk about something that has him in it, but it's not of his era. No, it's not Big Finish, or Dimensions in Time, or the 5-ish Doctor's reboot. No, it's Time Crash, of course, and here's why I want to talk about it. So in the normality of time travel, we jump back to 2005 with the success of Series 1. No matter what you could say about it, it was both a great introduction into the show for new viewers and a good reintroduction for fans of the classic series. But for the older fans, there was a part of the show that was missing for them, which was more for familiarity with the old show. Apart from the Autons, Daleks, and a couple slight references put around the show, there was nothing really to draw from the old show in general. But this all changed in 2006 when they announced that they were bringing back companions Sarah Jane and K9 in School Reunion, the Cybermen throughout the whole series, and a whole lot more references. This was only continued with 2007, where we not only got the return of the Macra and Gridlock in the milestone finale, but finally in Human Nature we got the indication of previous Doctors from the 10th and the 9th, Journal of Impossible Things, showing the first 8 Doctors to a new audience at bay. So there sprouted an idea: why don't we bring back one of the surviving Doctors back into the fold to bridge the gap between the classic and the new series? And so they did, by bringing back Davison, getting fan favourite writer Stephen Moffat to write it, and the amazing 5th Doctor director Graham Harper to direct it. So we start off at the best place to start, the beginning. Now, basically we start off with Martha leaving the TARDIS at the end of Series 3, but before she came back in Series 4. As instead of continuing with Martha, we continue with the Doctor as he sighs before he pulls the lever, so everything goes a bit haywire out of the controls, until it sorts itself out, and then he takes a closer look at it whilst a cricket-wearing Time Lord passes him by, as they both take a moment to realise who they are actually talking to before we hit the credits. But before we hit the credits, I think it's time we talk about the 5th Doctor and this crossover. So, obviously we have a couple of things to note already. One, Davison is looking older as the Doctor, and he doesn't really look like his chap himself back when the series was on. And of course, the only way you could answer this is he got older and obviously he can't look like he did 20 years ago, so that's why he's older, and of course there is a reference to this on screen.
That's because of me, though. Two of us together have shorted out the time differential.
I mean, that's kind of cool and useful that at least this time they actually have a way around the explanation of him being old. Though in all honesty, they could have just ignored it like in the 2 Doctors and I wouldn't have minded it. I mean, grey hair Patrick Troughton in that story was still Pat Troughton. The only real explanation is how Jamie aged from between the War Games and the 2 Doctors, but that's another story to tell, by another person. Anyway, we still have the usual Tennant titles, but because of the occasion, now we have Peter's name for the companion's name for the special occasion, which is cool in 2 different ways. One, it shows that they cared enough to place him alongside Tennant, and 2, it's the only time that his name has actually been in the open titles, because they didn't start doing that until the TV movie titles, so it's kind of cool in that aspect that they didn't forget because his era was before that. Anyways, back to the specials, we have something wrong already, and it's a question that usually gets asked about this episode. Why doesn't the 5th Doctor instantly recognise the 10th? And, well, there doesn't seem to be a bit of an answer, so sorry I can't answer that one. Now, 5 has been introduced, and already 10 seems a little bit out of character as he's fanning over his previous self, but to be honest, he hasn't had a multi-Doctor story like 5 has, so he wouldn't have a frame to reference to know how he himself would act towards a different incarnation, unless you count any other expanded universe meetups which have been released later, but have occurred earlier in his timeline. Here we get the explanation for the different appearance between time differentials, and 10 not really proving himself as the best sort of person, trying to prove how much he's trying to like his old incarnation's outfit before 5 tells him to.
Shut up!
Which may seem a bit harsh, but to be honest, if I had somebody fanning over me, I really wanted to get on with stuff, I'd probably say the same. 5 noticed that the TARDIS console change, which I don't think could be said for his Doctor, especially as his TARDIS had the least console changes throughout the classic era. It was twice, and his second one ended up being the room that stayed until the end of the classic era. He then places his brain specs / glasses, which we've only seen in 3 of his stories, Castrovalva, Kinder and Frontios, so it seems a bit weird that he would get them out now when they're being used to examine something, and well, this is the TARDIS. I don't think you need to really examine the TARDIS, no matter how different it looks. Afterwards, we get an alert that signals that the two tortoises are merging, which can cause a paradox the exact size of Belgium, which seems undramatic to the two of them, unless you find out that Belgium covers about 11,900 square miles, so it's a little less dramatic for the two of them, but not for the people who want to live in the universe, which is now going to have a hole in the space-time continuum. Afterwards, we get the comment about 5 not using the site because he was from Hans' fate, which is true, but that was under the circumstances of it being destroyed in the visitation, which the Doctor thought was a bit out of order because they destroyed his only helpful tool at the time. So I can see where you can get Ten's comment about it being easier for her because of it not being around. But I feel like it is a bit flippant when so far he's used it more times than 5 did in the time he had to with it. Then we get the funny Linda line, which at the time kind of didn't make sense because they were following the 10th Doctor and Rose at the time, but nowadays, knowing what 5 has had to do with Big Finish these days, there may be more of a chance that we'll find out why he was stalked by Linda now or ever. Next up is the resolution of part of the plot of the story, where 5 takes a bit of a backseat to let 10 do his work, because I kid you not, he remembers himself being 5 and watching them do that, but his previous self would have to see his future self do all the actions to remember it in the first place, but then his future self would have to show him how to do it, and oh god, I think I need to lie down after remembrance and all that stuff. But the problem is this, aren't the past Doctors not supposed to remember things from the crossovers? Or is this way true on certain occasions they can? So does this mean that, going back to my previous Doctor meetup example, the 2 Doctors, the 2nd Doctor has to remember that the 6th Doctor has to help the Sontarans at some point to break their machine in that story? Well, we don't know, but you know what's the most ironic thing about breaking this rule? He keeps the rule for his future Doctor team of the Day of the Doctor, where there's even more Doctors than the 2 that are here. I guess we can blame it on the
wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey.
Anyways, 5 has to go, and 10 makes a couple of references to 5's adventures like Nyssa and Tegan, Cybermen and the Mara, and Time Lords and the Funny Hats and the Mask, which would kindly date this for 5 in between Snake Dance and Mordred and Dead, but personally I like to place it after the 5 Doctors because of all the stuff that happens in that story with all the incarnations there, and it makes the most sense with all the references apart from Nyssa, which I guess 10 just likes to forget Turlo. Then we have the heartwarming last part of the mini-episode where 10 remembers all the fond memories of being his 5th self, which is very heartwarming indeed. In a way, you could say it's David putting the words of his love for Davison's incarnation into his mouth, but I think it also works for his Doctor. I mean, during this he generally compliments his previous self for inspiring his current incarnation as well, which is kind of commendable when you come to think about it. 10's had some hard times so far, and 5 has had some as well, but you know, these next 2 lines shows the quality of still allowing yourself to remember the past, even when you want to look to the future.
Today's to come. All my love to long ago.
And with that, 5 leaves his future self with some nice advice, which he ignores as we switch back into the ending of how the hell a big Titanic can get through the walls of the TARDIS and why it's here. Shame you're going to have to watch Void of the Damned for that, but as sure as hell you're not going to learn it here. So from all that, you probably think I hate this episode, don't you? Well, you'd be wrong. I like it. I really like it. I think for fans of both versions of the series, it works for a great celebration of the old and new, and it's good to see the chemistry of 5 and 10 working here. I mean, it'd be more devastating if we found out that they didn't really get along. Does it work as a Davison episode? In all honesty, not really. I mean, he's out of character for sure. I mean, he's a lot angrier than he was back in that era. And in the grand scheme of things, he does get outdone by Tennant. But does it matter? No, not really. I think it's all good and fun, and that's why I like it so much. I mean, it's way better than, say, Project Lazarus. Anyways, thank you very much for watching this video. Have a good night and enjoy Davison Month. Unless this is it, which will definitely suck.
Big